So my name's Heimann. I'm Professor of Modern History here at Cardiff University, and I teach Czechoslovak history, which is my area of expertise. The module I teach is Czechoslovakia, and it's offered to final year students. And what's special about this module is that it's taught exclusively through primary sources. So we don't use any secondary work, and it's all through seminars, so not through lectures. What you can do through role play, which you can't do otherwise, is really get students to empathize with positions which would not be their natural positions they would not naturally take. And I think that's really important in helping them to understand motivations of other people in the past. You can't really understand anything in the past without being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. So that's really what we're trying to teach them to do or encourage them to do.
It was a really interesting experience because I've never had that kind of having to really have to empathize with what they were feeling at the time. And it's really easy to just look back and say, oh, this is so obvious from our perspective. But when you go back and see what they were seeing on the ground, it's a completely different perspective, and it really makes you feel for them a lot more.
It was something quite overwhelming at first, I will admit. It's not something that you ever think, you kind of are always just in the present looking back with the benefit of hindsight. And so to be prompted to, constantly be aware that you can't know what will happen next and to immerse you in the materials of the time, it was really interesting. And then to go into a room where everyone else is encouraged to think the same way, yeah, you do kind of feel like you're almost living it, and you have a lot more sympathies for the people at the time thinking about it this way, I think.
A very tense relationship with Czechoslovakia. Hungary was kind of going through a very revanchist period, claiming southern Czechoslovakia and wanting to gain back its lands that it lost in the Trianon Treaty in 1920. But yeah, so the relationship isn't a fond one between the two countries.
Well, I do politics and history, so it was quite immersive for me in the sense that being an ambassador, well, diplomacy in general is a career that I have contemplated. So obviously it wouldn't really provide me an overview of like what being an ambassador in this day and age would be like, but kind of like having those practical skills that you need, making a lot of decisions, and just having to kind of elaborate on different parts of history that you're not entirely like sure about yourself, or things that you don't necessarily agree with. It was very interesting to kind of like develop my, how would I word this, like devil's advocacy skills. I think that was the highlight for me.
I was the ambassador to Germany, so it was quite a tough one. Honestly, I think it was the same challenges that ambassadors seem to face today, which is just keeping on top of everything, because there was so much going on, and I had to find all of this information from all of these different places, and really just wrapping my head around everything that was happening all at the same time was really difficult.
Oh, well, I was based in 1930s Germany, so it's a particularly interesting place to end up. But yeah, it was interesting to think about, the rise of the National Socialist Party. And, a lot of the time you just think they're like, oh, it was completely inevitable and there was just so much censorship and terror, and to just look back and be focused on, big events like the Holocaust and stuff. But when you're actually looking in the 30s and you're trying to put yourself in that kind of situation, you're very aware of the fact that you could not possibly predict what was coming next. You're seeing some signs of escalation, but a lot of these are just rumours of rearmament and stuff. So it's an interesting place to find yourself, and it does come with a lot of challenges to not look past that point when you know it's there, and to try and to base yourself in the present was a challenge, but an interesting one.
Did I manage to fix it? No, unfortunately not. And the Hungarians did take some land off of Czechoslovakia.
Overall, I'd say it was quite chaotic. It was very chaotic.
Yeah, fascinating way of understanding Europe as a whole through a specific country's history?
The biggest challenges I faced as an ambassador in that period was finding sources and actually getting in touch with my surroundings, just because it was such a complicated period of history, and there were so many different perspectives that you needed to take into account. You needed to take into account why these far-right riots were happening, but you also needed to take into account what the left-wing movement or what the resistance movement was like and what their motivations were. And with a module like this, you truly do realise that there are so many different things that you just never finish learning.
Yeah, well, I guess the hardest thing in that sense was not knowing what was coming, and acting as if I didn't, and coming from the sources as we got them. But it was, yeah, and hard to collate everything from lots of different places all at once. But it was quite fun to do.